Defenders of the most secure election in history, TM, seem to have faded away, most likely because Trump was defeated, and they're desperately still hoping that he'll fade away into obscurity. Unfortunately, so far as our previous work in Part 1 of the Election Integrity Motherlode have pointed out, not only are opinions about election fraud not going away, people are waking up in a huge way. It isn't just a one-time COVID or Donald Trump thing. Voters now structurally assume that their elections are going to be rigged. Of course, perhaps they're just misinformed. I don't know. This site, the Heritage Foundation, outlines over 1,400 cases of documented voter fraud that have resulted in over 1,200 actual convictions. And of course, anyone following what's happening in Arizona right now has probably awoken from the matrix. In our latest election integrity set, 54% of voters now think it's likely that cheating will affect the outcome of the next presidential election. 41% say it isn't likely, and 24% say not at all likely. Again, this is an election that doesn't come in the midst of a pandemic, and at this juncture, might not even be an election that includes Trump. 69% of Republicans, 47% of independents, and even 46% of Democrats think it's likely that cheating will affect the outcome of 2024. And only 13% of Republicans, 27% of independents, and 32% of Democrats say it isn't at all likely. And in the almost 3 years since the 2020 election, voters have almost completely lost faith in the system's ability to police itself. 56% say that state and federal officials are ignoring evidence of widespread election fraud. And 36% of voters say it's very likely. 40% say not likely, and only 27% say not at all likely. Again, the party numbers are stunning, not so much in how high the Republican numbers are, but in how much Democrats agree. 74% of Republicans say it's likely, and a majority, 51%, say very likely. Only 13% say not at all likely. And keep in mind, in many of the states where this election fraud is presumed to have happened, Republicans are pretty strongly represented in the legislature, the judiciary, and in election positions of authority. But 49% of independents also think it's likely, a plurality, and 44% of Democrats also think it's likely, 28% very likely. Only 37% of Democrats say it's not at all likely. How about any of you out there using the term election denier? Put this in your pipe and smoke it. Nearly half of Democrats think state and federal officials are covering up evidence of widespread voter fraud. Remember that 90% of Democrats say it's important to prevent cheating in elections just as much as anyone else. And for them to say this, it's pretty safe to assume that there's some public opinion justification to get to work cleaning up the election system. And if we can say that now, imagine what happens when public opinion shifts even more and Americans of all political affiliations think that election officials are hiding widespread fraud. How much longer is our government going to be able to cling to the consent of the governed? But here's the thing. Even though it's objectively reasonable to say that recent election integrity snafus disproportionately may have affected Republicans, only 1% more voters trust Republicans on the issue of election integrity than Democrats. This is an incredibly important finding because recently voters have trusted Republicans much more on a host of issues like the border, the economy, government spending. The only issues where the parties have been tied up like this is climate, government ethics, and Social Security. And here are the party numbers. This is absolutely zero crossover. Both parties trust theirs more, though independents give Republicans a tentatively decent lead. These numbers are not what you'd expect to see if one party was objectively in the right here. And keep in mind that voters overwhelmingly continue to think that cheating affected the outcome of both the 2020 and the 2022 elections. Elections that were kind of treated like referendums on Trump. And yet Republicans aren't trusted more on the issue of election integrity? It's tough to know for sure, and I don't want to read too much into it, but it could be the increasing divide between Trump voters and the Republican establishment. Don't forget, as recently as last fall, Republican voters overwhelmingly said that the Republican Party was the party of Trump and the Make America Great Again movement. With the poor showing of Republican candidates and elected officials defending Trump, it has to be asked, are Trump supporters and the Republican Party on track for a breakup? Post your theories in the YouTube comments, and if you haven't seen it yet, please catch part 1 of our Election Integrity Motherlode, which I'll link at the end of this video on YouTube. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, follow us on Twitter, and thanks for watching.